Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for joining today's news conference. Bienvenue à cette conférence de presse.
Welcome to the news conference.
Remarks from the Chair of the Council of Federation, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, followed by remarks in French by the Premier of Quebec, François Legault. We will then take questions from media. It is my pleasure to now introduce the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to start by thanking my fellow premiers. I always say I have a team of champions for such a positive and productive meeting over the last few days. I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with my fellow premiers as Team Canada, and it's never been more important and never been more united since I've been premier for the last over seven and a bit years. Over the last 3 days, Canada's premiers have worked hard to move forward on our shared priorities. We've met with the Indigenous leaders and frontline healthcare workers. We sat down with Prime Minister Carney, and that's the first time that's happened, to discuss ongoing negotiations with the U.S. and how we're working together to build a stronger, more competitive economy. We met as premiers and talked about the issues that matter most to the people we serve. We talked about standing up for workers in the face of President Trump's tariffs. We talked about cutting red tape, opening internal markets, and building a stronger, more self-reliant economy. We talked about the need for real bail reform that keeps criminals behind bars and keeps our communities safe. Prime Minister Carney has made it very clear in the comments to premiers and will be holding him accountable on bail reform. Premiers are also calling for a stronger provincial role in immigration for one simple reason: we know our labor markets best. At our first ministers' meetings, Prime Minister Carney agreed. Yesterday, at a meeting of federal and provincial immigration ministers, the federal immigration minister wasn't on the same page as her prime minister. We need the prime minister to be very, very clear with his minister. She needs to work with the provinces and territories to fix Canada's immigration system and make it more responsive to economic and market needs. In the meantime, Canada's premiers agreed to work together to use our authorities under Section 95 of the Constitution, including to issue our own work permits. I'll speak for Ontario. We will be issuing our own work permits. We aren't going to sit around and wait for the federal government. On healthcare, we're making it easier for nurses and doctors to move and work anywhere in Canada. We also talked about new ways to get life-saving medications into the hands of patients faster. But most importantly, we agreed on the need to remain united. And I've always said, united we stand, divided we fall. I know we're in great hands under the leadership of PEI Premier Rob Lance, who will soon take over as chair of the Council of Federation. With the United Team Canada approach, we're going to build and protect the true North, strong and free. Thank you very much, and may God bless the people of Canada.
Thank you, Premier. Je donne maintenant la parole au Premier ministre du Québec, Monsieur.
Now, the Quebec Premier, François Legault. Hello, everyone. And the first thing that I would like to tell you is thank you. Thank you to Doug Ford for the warm welcome. Thank you also to Doug Ford for his chairing in the last year. It's been a year that with a lot of movement and with the arrival of Donald Trump. So we had some excellent meetings and we had a great leadership from Doug Ford.
Depuis 3 jours,
for the last 3 days, we have spoken a lot about the impacts of the tariffs and the uncertainty of tariffs that happened with Donald Trump. We had the opportunity to meet Indigenous communities. We had the opportunity to also meet the the Canada's Prime Minister. And we spoke about assistance to workers, and we spoke about the importance of making investments, major investments together with the provinces and the territories and the governments on the federal level in order to help replace the jobs that are or who that could be lost in the exchanges with the United States. Today, we spoke about an internal trade on a provincial and territorial level, and obviously with more than ever, the premiers from every province and territory wanted to increase the commercial exchanges and remove the barriers and take advantage of a 41 million person workforce. And we also talked about immigration. And obviously, there is a situation that is quite different from province to province. But I do believe that there was a consensus to say that the federal government needs to give more clout to the provinces and give them more choice and selecting the number of immigrants. And we know that in Quebec, there is the additional challenge of stopping the decline of the French language. So yes, we do have some powers in Quebec, but ourselves as well, we are asking a lot more power in order to be able to, amongst other things, reduce the number of temporary immigrants in Montreal and in Laval. And we spoke today about health, and we are continuing asking an increase of the health transfers from the federal government. The federal government is not doing its share in terms of financing health services, which increase higher than any other expense because of the impacts of the aging population and medication, new technologies. And finally, we spoke about public safety. And we want the government, the federal government, to be prudent before they free sexual delinquents or people who have committed acts of crime, of violent crime. It is very important to be able to guarantee
d'être un peu plus dur sur
that a stronger arm on the bail conditions. And finally, also, I'd like to wish good luck. Where's our colleague, Rob? He's over on that side. So Rob Lance, so the premier from PEI, who is going to himself assume for the next year the chair of the Council of the Federation and therefore the Council of the Federation. So good luck, Rob, and thank you so much for having accepted this responsibility.
Monsieur le Premier Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Premier.
Starting with media who are present, followed by questions for those attending virtually. Please come to the microphone, state your name, outlet, and direct your question to one premier. Just a reminder, you will be limited to one question only. First question.
Hi there, Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Premier Smith, you and a number of premiers have said that you were going to speak with Premier Eby about the idea of getting an oil pipeline through BC. I'm wondering how those conversations went. And Mr. Eby, I'd hope you could respond to how you feel those went. And I want to follow up on something you said yesterday, too. You said you'd be supportive of a potential oil pipeline through Alberta if Ms. Smith was able to find a proponent for that. I just want to clarify. You'd be open to having a pipeline going through BC if there was a company that was willing to do that?
I'll start because I know that maybe the media isn't aware of how many areas of common ground that Premier Eby and I have. We have talked about ammonia export from the Port of Prince Rupert. I'm very supportive of the LNG expansions that are underway, as well as additional new LNG proposals. We have talked about an intertie so that we can have our electricity systems with greater integration. And, of course, expanding the capacity of the Trans Mountain pipeline by putting in additional measures, compression, and a few other things. They can actually expand the capacity as well as dredging the second narrows, and we've been supportive of that as well. So I would say that what we're looking forward to is a potential to restart what I think would have been a transformational project with Northern Gateway. It may not be the same route. It certainly needs to have a lot more consultation. The first time that it went through, it had 35 Indigenous partners who were equity owners in that, and that that has to be the starting point for any new project. There has to be meaningful engagement and meaningful economic involvement of nations. So we're advancing that along with the Pathways project, because we think that having lower and lower emissions is also a way to demonstrate we've listened to some of the concerns about that have been raised by British Columbia, but I would say that our priority is to work on those first 4 projects that I mentioned, and then if we can get to a point where we have a proponent and are able to start on that, then we will.
Thanks very much for the question. Let me just begin. We're facing a bit of a situation in British Columbia right now. At our Red Chris mine in northwest British Columbia, there was an accident overnight. There are 3 miners that are currently trapped underground. They are, to the best of our knowledge, uninjured and in a refuge area. There was early communication with the company. The company is working with our world-leading mining rescue teams. BC miners are the best in the world. Our rescue teams are exceptional, and they will be working overtime to bring these workers home safely to their families. 2 of the workers are from British Columbia, 1 is from Ontario. I've spoken with Premier Ford, and we're keeping his government up to date as well. Obviously, it's very concerning for the families, for the workers in the sector, and all British Columbians and Canadians, and our thoughts are with the families and an appreciation with the incredibly brave rescue teams that are working right now. On your question, I agree strongly with Premier Smith that we have a huge amount of work to do that is going to create incredible economic opportunity for our 2 provinces. It is without doubt. We have our points of disagreement, but there are far more points of agreement in terms of how we're going to build our economies in our respective provinces. My focus as the BC Premier is on projects that we have where we're either imminent in terms of final investment decision, or final investment decision has been taken, and we need a strong federal partner to be able to support us in delivering those projects. North of $50 billion worth of projects in our province alone. And what I've encouraged the Prime Minister and Premier Smith to do about their project that they're excited about is to identify a proponent and to move forward with that if that is the direction that they'd like to go. I will acknowledge some frustration that we have so many projects that are either imminent shovel in the ground projects or with a small amount of support from the federal government would be ready to go. And a lot of the discussion is around this project that does not currently have a proponent. So let's get working on what we can do to build this country and build our economy. And when Premier Smith and the Prime Minister are in position with a proponent, we're absolutely willing to have those conversations with them.
Hi there, Kate McKenna with CBC. This is for Premier Ford. Premier Ford, I'm wondering if you could expand on some of what you were talking about regarding the conflict between the federal government and the provinces over immigration. What exactly is the issue, and what did the federal minister say?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a conflict. The conversation we had with the Prime Minister is very open, and under the Constitution that I have to thank Premier Smith for mentioning, we have authority in that area. No one understands their sectors and their labor force better than the premiers. And by no means, I want to emphasize this, it's no means the Prime Minister's, well, this is his issue right now, but this has been going on for decades. I'll give you an example. I have a tremendous amount of asylum seekers that are up in Etobicoke and in the hotels. They're healthy, they're willing to work, they're hardworking people, but they're waiting over 2 years. And they're just sucking off the system nonstop, not their fault. The fault falls under immigration, that it takes over 2 years to get a work permit. So as we're paying education, paying healthcare, paying their rent and hotels, which is exorbitant, they want to get out there and they want to be like every other Canadian. They want to find a job. They want to be able to first start off renting a condo or part of a house and then buying a house. But we're tired of waiting around. I can't wait around. It's costing our province an absolute fortune. Just last year, we were close to 100,000 asylum seekers, and I'm still waiting to get paid back from the federal government. That's one issue. But there's jobs available in Ontario, and we need to give them work permits and make sure that they're out there working, and contributing back to society. I'm not waiting any longer. We're issuing work permits in Ontario for these folks to give back and contribute to society in Ontario.
Boris Proulx, Le Devoir. Ma question est pour le Premier ministre Legault.
Boris Proulx for Premier Legault. This isn't your first meeting for the Council Federation. On the contrary, but you'll agree with me that usually the forum is an opportunity for premiers to get together and create a common front towards the federal government and with some strong language. And what we saw today in the community, in the news press release, a few general comments, but there's no percentage numbers or anything like that. Like, for example, for the health transfer, yesterday there was a lot of roundtables with Prime Minister Carney, and congratulations. But where did the spirit of the Council of Federation go?
Je pense que
I think that firstly, we had the opportunity to have a 2-for-1. So we had a meeting from the Council of the Federation on top of a half day with Canada's Prime Minister. I think that in the current situation, it was necessary. Firstly, there were discussions that happened with the United States with an objective of a potential agreement on August 1st, which is next Friday. So it was normal to be able to take the time with Mr. Carney to see where we are at in these negotiations with the United States. Obviously, following the tariffs and the uncertainty that was created by Mr. Trump, we want to implement major projects. So we had the opportunity to speak about the defense program and our ports and critical minerals. So I do believe that obviously the work has started on that front. I came, yes, often to meetings where we're asking money for health, and we continue doing so. I'm not saying that we're always going to get what we want in a quick fashion, but we want at least for the indexing that was promised, that's 5%, that it continues. And listen, earlier we were talking about immigration. You are used to hearing Quebec talk about immigration, and what I heard today is basically a unanimous ask that all the provinces have more immigration powers, and that the federal could finally reduce the interest to be able to assess the situation of the asylum seekers. It doesn't make any sense that it takes 3 years to be able to assess a document, whereas in other countries, like in France, it takes 3 months. And between those 2 years, it's the provinces that are paying for these services. And they end up in a situation where there's an overcapacity. Currently, I was saying earlier that there's a lack of housing and places in schools, lack of teachers, lack of nurses. And on top of it, we already have the decline of French in Quebec. So it's time for the federal government to reduce its 3-year delay to 3 months. And I do have colleagues who are also on the same side, and I felt that.
Mark McAllister from City News. A question for Premier Ford, if possible. A month ago, you had said that you would be all over Prime Minister Carney when it came to bail reform. Yes. Just a few moments ago, you said that you would continue to hold him to account on the matter. Excuse me. There is indication that there is legislation coming forward in the fall. So where is the disconnect exactly at this point that there's a need to continue to hold him to account?
Well, I just want to make sure that they put that legislation forward. You know, I've heard this in the past, and I have a great deal of respect for Prime Minister Carney. He's a gentleman that when he says he's going to do something, I believe him. He's going to get it done. But there still has to be accountability. And it's not, you know, half-baked either, because last time it was kind of hokey-pokey. We want, you know, full-fledged bail reform, and I'd love to see mandatory sentencing. So when someone breaks into your home, puts a gun to your head, terrorizes your neighborhood, doesn't get out on bail after being out on bail for 5 times. And that's what we need. When you break a law, one country, one law, you're going to jail, and there'll be a deterrent for all the other criminals who want to terrorize our neighborhoods and keep them behind bars. So when they steal a car or put a gun to someone's head, well, you're going to jail for a long time if you use a weapon.
Rachel Aiello, CTV News. I'm going to direct this towards Premier Smith, but if anyone else wants to chime in, feel free. David Naughton, who you folks spoke with yesterday, has just told CTV News that he thinks it is highly unlikely that we'll reach a comprehensive deal by August the 1st. Was Prime Minister Mark Carney that explicit in the meeting yesterday? And how much patience are premiers going to have if this deal talks are going to go on and on and on?
I would say that, I mean, I'm watching Truth Social along with everyone else because things could change in 5 minutes. But what we're hearing from the Americans is it looks like they're putting off a full renegotiation of the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement until next year. I find that disappointing. I would have liked to have seen it accelerated. But I think everybody is focused in now on the sectoral problems that we have: autos, steel, aluminum, timber, copper, maybe pharmaceuticals, semiconductors. Those seem to be the targeted areas that the U.S. president is getting quite aggressive on. And so if we can come up with some kind of common arrangement on those issues, those sectoral agreements by August 1st, we'll look at that as a win. And if it takes a little bit longer to renegotiate Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement to make sure that we get it right, then I'm supportive of that.
Maybe I'll jump in there too, just to say that I think it's really important for Canada to get a good deal rather than rushing to take any deal, including one that might harm us in the long term. I think our kids and grandkids are going to look back at this time as an inflection point where we had the opportunity to stand up for our nation's independence and for our economic self-sufficiency. And I think it's really, really amazing to see how the premiers are united around building this country up. And the Prime Minister is right there on the same page. So I do want to take this moment to thank all the firefighters who've been working together. I thanked all the colleagues who've sent firefighters and water bombers to our province. And just to give the national media a bit of a perspective, in one community in the north, Flin Flon, this iconic mining town that we have in northern Manitoba, was surrounded by a fire 300,000 hectares in size. And I know what you're thinking, how big is a hectare? It's 100 meters by 100 meters, right? So this massive, massive blaze. And it was a collection of local fire departments from across our province that set up shop after the community was evacuated. Southern Manitoba communities like Morden, First Nations like Ebb and Flow. You had the city of Flin Flon Fire Department themselves, and by working together, flying overhead a week later, you could see that this massive blaze that incinerated the forest around them, they managed to hold it off and save this iconic town. That's the power of unity. That's the power of working together. And in this historic moment, we should look to our frontline heroes, whether that's firefighters, law enforcement, military, for that example of how to work together. And I think what you're seeing here is that same example of unity. We want to build the mega projects. We want to have internal trade within Canada. We want to put people to work and ensure that the next generation can have great careers too. And just like those firefighters standing shoulder to shoulder got it done in Flin Flon, I'm very confident the first ministers, the premiers working together will get it done for our country too. So thanks, Doug Ford, for being such a great host this year.
Bonjour, Valérie Gamache de Radio-Canada.
Gamache from Radio-Canada. My question is for Mr. Legault and Madame Holt. You talked about pipelines yesterday, Mr. Legault. You opened the door to a pipeline that would attract Cette. Did you have, would you, and is it compatible with the desire of New Brunswick to be able to develop also these different steps to be able to welcome people? Well, I can maybe start by saying that honestly, currently, there is no project, no concrete financial project on the table. So there needs to be a project that is complete, financed on the table. What I said yesterday is that if there is a project that was done, well, what I would like it would have to have the best economic benefit for Quebec. It has to be good for Quebec. But we're in speculations. There's no projects, neither for New Brunswick, nor for Cette, nor for Bécomo. It's kind of, I don't know how you could call it, but their ideas maybe, but for the time being, it's not financed. Yeah.
Pour nous autres, en Nouveau-Brunswick,
And for ourselves in New Brunswick, we would like to have access to natural gas, which comes all the way to Quebec City. And we would like to make sure that it continues maybe 100 kilometers more to get to the New Brunswick border. So we can have access to natural gas for industries, major industries in New Brunswick who need it. We need reliable energy sources. So we're talking with private companies, we're talking with Mr. Legault. And I really appreciate his point that the need of economic benefits it has to be there for Quebec and the communities that are between Quebec City and the border. I think that Rivière-du-Loup is one of them who would like to also have access to natural gas. So we're working on the opportunities for something positive to happen for Quebec and New Brunswickers as well.
Good afternoon, Premier Stefanovic, CBC News. I'll direct my questions to Premiers Eby and Holt, if that's okay. Today, you're talking about pressing domestic issues, but over the course of the last few months, the central focus of your meetings has been the trade war with the U.S. Are other issues such as bail reform that you're talking about today, immigration, healthcare, taking a backseat because of the trade war?
Not at all. The challenge in these roles is always making sure you're looking after your people back at home. And when we go back home, people are anxious about their jobs because of the president's unilateral actions attacking our country. They are concerned about public safety and making sure that communities are safe for everybody. And they're worried about affordability, cost of home, rent, the cost of living. These are common issues, and I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention challenges related to healthcare. These are common issues that we face across the table in different ways, and this table, including the table with the Prime Minister, enables us to have these important conversations. We have to be able to do multiple things at once in this country. We have to ensure that we're fixing the plane while it's flying. And not only are we going to do it, but when we're done, it's going to be a project that all Canadians can be proud of. And the nice thing about this table is we're united on that. We're focused on it. And the Prime Minister in his meeting with us confirmed that he's on side too. So we're all pointed in the right direction. We're ready to go.
I think I'd just add to that to say, absolutely, with this incredible group of people and with the Prime Minister, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And so, in fact, what's happened is that the pressing threats that Donald Trump has made to our economy have meant that instead of occupying all of our meetings and squeezing out conversations about bail reform and immigration, we've been meeting a lot more. We've spent a lot more time together in my entire tenure as Premier in just 8 months than I think my predecessor would have spent in 6 years. So we are spending a lot of time dedicated to that economic threat that keeps New Brunswickers up at night as they wonder whether their job in the forestry sector is going to get hit by an increased tariff to softwood lumber, and they wonder whether the contract they have with that American company is going to go away, and it's going to mean that they can't afford to continue in an environment that was already really expensive. I share Premier Eby's feelings that in New Brunswick, New Brunswickers are worried about access to health care, and they're worried about being able to pay the bills. But in order for our government to be able to deliver on our commitment to improving access to health care in New Brunswick and making sure everybody can be part of a family health team, to making life more affordable, whether that's housing or the cost of electricity or others, I need to make sure that we are growing our economy in order to cover the cost of those services. And that means working with these amazing people to drive projects of national interest to their quickest, to maximize our use of resources and trade corridors and access to things like natural gas that'll help fuel our economic growth in order to deliver on the commitments that we've made to make life more affordable for New Brunswickers and to help them have access to health care. So I think the economic conversation that we've been having because of the threat that Trump posed is critical and takes up a lot of space, but we also have been able to meet so frequently that we can continue to talk about ways that we can improve our healthcare system collectively and how we can push the federal government to have a more responsive immigration system in the hands of the province expenses so that we can be bringing in the people we need to care for our seniors and to build our homes. And we can do all those things in part because we're meeting a lot more frequently, spending a lot more time together in order to get all of the work done.
Bonjour, Sébastien Desrosiers de Radio-Canada. Ma question est pour vous, Monsieur Legault.
My question is for you, Mr. Legault. When you arrived here, you wanted to discuss defense.
France, le mois dernier.
I understand that some companies accompanied you to France last month. There would seem to be a quota for the local products of the expenses that the federal government will have during the next years. Did you receive this kind of engagement on Mr. Carney's end? If not so, what engagement did you receive in terms of defense? What I understood from Mr. Carney yesterday is that he has agreed to an approach that could ensure an industrial base in Canada. In the past, the federal government, the Canadian Army, would purchase equipment from the United States and then would ensure that, more or less, that there would be enough for Canada. And I believe that we have now a consensus within the premiers of the provinces, and Mr. Carney said that he agreed to such an approach. That is to say that when the federal government will give contracts, that will be directly to Canadian companies, that these will be partnerships between Canadian-American companies, Canadian-European partnerships. This is a very important element in choosing the suppliers. What are we going to construct in the manufacturing sector in Canada? So for the future, I believe that in a context that, well, what was said by Donald Trump during the last months, it is important for Canada to have the autonomy to do so, but it's not ciphered. It's still the principle, but now it's a big step for Mr. Carney to say that this will no longer work in the same way that Mr. Trudeau's government used to work.
Last comments there about making sure we spend military spending right across our country and tied into economic growth. I can't have a press conference without mentioning two companies, General Dynamics in London, light armored vehicles, great people down there, and Heddle Shipyards, which I know maybe they're partnering up with Davies or around the country, but they're a great company in Hamilton. We need to spread this work right across the country. Thank you.
If I could add as well on that, my apologies there, but what an incredible moment we're in terms of the solutions that we have. And I think we have to look from within, and I look to the critical mineral potential we have across this country, in particular to the north. And in the last few days, it's been great to have very meaningful conversations with my colleagues, but as well with the Prime Minister to talk about what we could do to expedite these big nation-building projects that really will start employing Canadians from coast to coast to coast, but that are dual use as well, so that our communities could truly benefit from those. So from that perspective, the discussions around Arctic security are at the forefront, and I really think it's a moment that we're in where we have to ensure that our communities are as healthy as they are as we assert our sovereignty as a country. But there's so much that we have in terms of the opportunity, and I think unlocking those through these dual-use infrastructure is going to be key, whether it's the Arctic Security Corridor, the Grays Bay Road and Port, or the Kivalliq Hydro Fiber Link, or the Deep Sea Port in Qikirtarjuaq. There's some really nation-building moments that we're in, and I think Nunavut has so much to offer the country, and I can't thank my colleagues here enough for the incredible support we do get, that we need to invest from coast to coast to coast.
I'd like to just jump in and recognize this as one of the Premier of Nunavut's last meetings. He's been a huge champion of Northern sovereignty, Arctic sovereignty, Northern defense. His work is leading to the efforts out of Ottawa, and I just wanted to say thank you so much, PJ, for your work for the country. It's been amazing.
Hello, I'm Michael Serapia with CPAC. I direct my question to you, Premier Ford, but invite commentary from other premiers as well, because in the communique, there's the reference that premiers look forward to a comprehensive mutual recognition agreement covering all goods with implementation by December of this year. I'm wondering, where are you right now in those discussions? At what point will Canadians hear details about what you as premiers are agreeing to achieving internal free trade?
Well, I think we've come a long way, considering no other group of premiers, as long as I can ever remember, have been able to sign 11 MOUs. There's still a couple, and had a great conversation with the two premiers from Quebec and Newfoundland, and they're going to, I'm sure they're going to come on board as well. This is about making sure that we have free and fair trade across our country. And to be very frank, before this came to topic this year, 99% of Canadians believed that they could have free trade across the country. But this is going to boost our economy by over $200 billion. It will increase our GDP by anywhere from 5 to 6%. But you talk to the average person, they can't believe that we can ship a bottle of wine from Ontario out to BC or vice versa. And the case that you were saying, Tim, about the deal about someone shipping a case from Quebec into Nova Scotia got charged. Do you believe that? Or where was it? New Brunswick? New Brunswick, sorry. But do you believe that? Someone being charged, going to court because they buy a case of booze in Quebec and bring it to New Brunswick? So we're moving forward with this. We're getting rid of, at least Ontario is, getting rid of any amendments, and we're going full steam. Ontario's open for business, and we look forward to companies coming to Ontario and opening up shop here.
And if I can just take the opportunity to jump in because he's referencing the Como case, I'm pleased to confirm that New Brunswick passed legislation this year to eliminate that personal exemption. So you can bring alcohol products from Quebec into New Brunswick now with no fines. And we've also passed a direct-to-consumer legislation so that New Brunswickers can enjoy the benefits of BC wines and Ontario wines, and look forward to continuing to expand the work like we're doing on labor mobility. And I'll just echo, actually, that I think we have made more progress than has been made in a long time on internal trade and removing exemptions, thankfully with a partner in the federal government who's also being aggressive on that, and I appreciate the desire to see the details and see the when. I think you'll find friends who are similarly impatient at this table of wanting to see it get to that simple, clean document that all Canadians and entrepreneurs can understand about the fact that they could put a good they've made in a truck in BC and take it all the way across the country without added burden, pause, or cost. That's what we're striving towards. We're making good progress, and we're optimistic that we'll have something that people will appreciate come the end of this year.
Okay, maybe what I'll add is that we have the same target, the same objective in Quebec, but we chose to go through a bill 112. So we table a bill saying that we remove all barriers between provinces, but it's not adopted. So for reason of democracy, we prefer to discuss that with opposition parties before settling that. But we are a majority government, so I think there are good chances that this fall the bill will be adopted in Quebec, so Quebec will be part of this free trade.
I would just add to all of that, in light of so many things going on internationally, nationally, even within our provinces, and I echo Premier Canu's praise for our municipal, often volunteer firefighters, our shared community of Creighton, Flin Flon. It was literally those folks that saved those communities as they fought for days, if not a few weeks on end, and continue to fight in many communities in both Saskatchewan, Manitoba, as well as some in Alberta and Ontario. And so to all of those in the front lines, from the bottom of our heart, we say thank you, and I say thank you to the provinces that have added to our resources in our province officially. But with all that is going on internationally in the way of international trade relationships being reset, tariff discussions, counter tariffs, periphery reactions from other countries such as China and other countries around the world. If there's any positive from any of this, and I'm not saying there's a lot, but if there is any positive from any of this, it is the fact that we in Canada very much are looking internally to control what we can control in terms of, and you hear Prime Minister Carney, and credit to him, talking about resetting the regulatory environment that we have in Canada so that we can build things quicker. And so we can, attract investment and provide jobs for Canadians in all of our respective 13 jurisdictions across our nation. You see us as provincial and territorial leaders, and in fairness, the federal government as well, taking significant steps in not just talking about doing better when it comes to lower tariff, lower barrier, less regulatory differences between our provinces, but actually taking significant action, some of the most significant action that I think has been taken in over a decade across Canada. And so step by step, whether it be MOUs, discussions about the various differences that we have, whether they're regulatory, labor mobility, whether they're procurement sensitivities that we have across Canada, and we're all open to having, all of those, yes, sensitive discussions, but how can we do better in ensuring that, people can live and work anywhere in Canada and they can purchase Canadian goods anywhere in Canada. So I think it's important to recognize the significant steps that are happening in reducing the exemptions in the CFTA, for example, the MOUs that are being signed, and the reciprocal legislation that has been introduced as well. And so credit to my colleagues for not only taking that conversation more serious than I have seen over the course of the last number of years, but actually acting on the areas where they can act. And a credit to Canadians for taking part in that conversation as well. There's an awful lot going on in the world today, and we need to very much participate, yes, as a nation of Canada in those global conversations, and they're difficult, and they're changing rapidly. But we also need to control what we can control, and I think in many ways you're seeing that happen, and we can be proud of the work our federal government is doing in fairness. And far be it for me to be a person up here that has said words like that over the last 10 years. But the work that our provincial leaders and our other leaders across the nation are doing, our Indigenous leaders that we met with earlier this week.
Hi there, Jack Howan from the Trillium. Big surprise, I have a question for Premier Ford. We published a story today on Tony Miele's consulting work for developers. Do you think it's appropriate for your party's chief fundraiser to raise political donations from developers he also privately consults for, who have major financial stakes in the decisions your government makes, and will he remain chair of the PC Ontario Fund?
Yeah, well, thanks for informing that. We all run, and we need political donations, and whatever his business is his business. But we have bigger things to deal with, to be very frank with you. You're asking these questions, and we have a crisis in Canada about Donald Trump attacking us. We're trying to protect our economy. We're doing internal trade, moving that forward. That's what people are concerned about. They're concerned about healthcare, the economy, keeping their jobs, paying their rent. But that's my comment there.
Bonjour, messieurs les premiers ministres. Ma question est pour Monsieur Legault.
My question is for Premier Legault. I would like to come back to health transfer. You just mentioned a percentage of this increase, an indexation of 5% actually annually. What I understand of the health transfer, but yesterday during your comment during the press conference, you seem to have convey some doubt about the capacity of paying from the federal government. You mentioned that there will be important investments in defense, and you said that you expect it to be an important deficit from the federal. So do you think that the federal government should acquire more debt to give more to the provinces? Do you have a doubt that these are things that the federal government could do?
People who don't recognize him, it's Vladimir Guerrero Sr. who's there. So, his son and here in Toronto. Regarding the financial situation.
En français, si ça vous dérange.
Ah, c'est vrai, je vais y aller en français, parfait.
It's true, I will reply in French.
Pris l'habitude depuis trop longtemps.
I've taken the habit of speaking English in private with my colleagues.
Ouais, ouais.
It's because we will not understand, that is why.
Quand on regarde.
Listen, when we evaluate the financial situation, this is something that we've discussed for some time. We've worked on this a lot on the increase of health transfer. We need to establish the difference between short-term and long-term. In long-term situations, the federal government will be better positioned than provinces and territories in terms of healthcare, because the federal provides financing of 22% of healthcare expenses. And healthcare expenses are the only ones that increase more than revenue because of the impact of aging of population and new technologies impact as well, and medication. So if we make a projection,
On voit que
we can see
long terme.
that in medium term and long term, the federal government is the one that will be better positioned to do so. The provinces, if we don't change anything, we will always be in a deficit situation. In the short term, the increase is important in terms of defense. This will cause pressure on the finances of the federal government. But let me be clear. We need, however, to continue asking the federal government to do their part in terms of healthcare.
2%.
It's not a good thing for them to finance only 22% of the healthcare expenses. So there is a matter of increase of these expenses, the indexation for which the indexation of 5%, even the 22%, this should be increased. Did you discuss this with Mr. Carney yesterday? Was it a topic that was approached, and what was his say?
Sur la santé.
The discussion about healthcare was today, so I don't think it was discussed with yesterday.
But no, healthcare was a subject for today. But Scott can give you a good compliment, Vladimir.
Thank you.
Samantha Pope.
When we discussed healthcare recently, one thing of note that I think has impact on what Premier Legault has said is, provincial healthcare budgets in a post-pandemic world have, increased significantly. As population increases. I think, in fairness, the complexity of what's walking through the front door of our hospitals and our healthcare system are people, but it's certainly increased over the last decade or so. The whole conversation around mental health, addictions, recovery is changing before our very eyes. As the drugs that are in our community today are very different than the drugs that were in our nation a decade ago. And, we're seeing, 8, 9, 10% increases across the board, or at least in Saskatchewan, and I don't think we're alone, in the investments that we're making in, delivering health care and, providing access to primary health care providers of all types and a timely surgery. And so the conversation, and really I think it's relevant because when you look at the Council of Federation's formation just over 20 years ago, it really was formed to work alongside the federal government in adequately funding what was ever-increasing healthcare costs at that point in time. And that conversation continues. Maybe not yesterday at the FMM opportunity that we had, but it continues at this table as the investments that provinces are making are far higher than the increases that we're seeing in the Canada Health Transfer. The investment that the federal government has made has slipped to be far below where it was originally or where it was intended to be over time. However, in saying that, I would say again that there is an open ear and there is an open conversation with the Prime Minister. I'd say maybe more open than it's been in a decade on the priorities of the healthcare system being at least shared with the provinces as opposed to being imposed on by the Prime Minister's office. And so we'll get to that conversation with the Prime Minister. I know the Health Minister's table certainly is there. But again, in addition to my comments earlier about an ever-changing, rapidly changing environment, whether it be international, national, or provincial, or even at the community level, you know, my goodness, we could all do with just a little bit less going on from time to time. Things are happening very quickly, and they continue in the healthcare field as well.
Et juste une autre chose sur cette question, la livraison système de
And another thing about this,
valeur
providing healthcare is one of our Canadian values. So in this historical moment, I think it is very important to have a federal government that would relaunch this priority as a national government.
le fédéral
Also, the federal government at this level has other tools, other monetary tools.
Jean.
They could print more money at the level of provinces and territories. We only have other tools that are fiscal. So this is a challenge for us in the way that Mr. Legault just explained.
Yeah.
So if we do have a partnership to make this project move forward, to have a healthcare system that will make every Canadian proud, I think that this will allow us to seize this momentum that we have right now.
Having a universal healthcare system that is open to everybody is one of our fundamental Canadian values. Like, this is one of the things that separates us from the Americans. And so if we want to say that we're standing up to Donald Trump and we're never going to be the 51st state, let's make sure that our universal healthcare system is strong and supports Canadians in every region of the country. And I think we have a good partner in the Prime Minister right now to advance that project. And it doesn't hurt that they have other tools at the federal level. They have monetary tools, where we only have fiscal tools, right? They can borrow, they can print money, they can do quantitative easing, all these other things. But I think if we work together, along with the mega projects, along with the internal trade, making healthcare universal for every Canadian, that's something that we should all be proud of. That's our heritage, that's our legacy, that's who we are.
I think you asked if the federal government should borrow money in order to give more on this front, and I have to say we've tried that, and we have an inflation crisis, an affordability crisis. I think that the new model that we're pursuing is let's make everybody wealthy. Let's make money before we spend it. And that, I think, is the focus of our conversation with the Prime Minister, is what are the big wealth-generating, nation-building projects that we can build so that we can get more wealth creators, more job creators, more taxpayers, so that we can pay for the things that we care about, healthcare being one, but we also have a 5% NATO commitment that has to be reached as well. And so we can't keep on digging a debt hole on that. We've got to do a reversal. And so I think that was the nature of the conversation with the Prime Minister. And so once we get to that point where some of these projects are ready to go and we're generating more revenue and we're in balanced budgets, then I think we can talk about what those priorities might be.
This will be the last reporter.
Samantha Pope, CTV News. This question is for Premier Ford. What do you make of Japan getting a trade deal with the U.S. with lower tariffs, and specifically, what does that mean for Canada's car industry?
Well, if we're gonna start doing comparators, let's put this into perspective. Japan buys approximately $79 billion worth of products off the U.S. We buy $349 billion of products off the U.S. We're the U.S.'s #1 customer. So we buy 400% more than what Japan, actually more than 400% more than what Japan pays. So maybe when Japan catches up to us, then we can sit down and talk those numbers. But those are facts. So we, again, I'll repeat this. We buy more products off the U.S. than Japan, and Korea, China, Mexico, and the U.K. combined. I think we throw France in there too. But anyways, we're an economic powerhouse, folks. We don't have to take a backseat to anyone, and we sure the heck don't have to take a backseat to Donald Trump. We need to start diversifying our trade, sending our goods all around the world. We have to make sure that we increase our energy, no matter if it's the oil or electricity. We're leading the G7 on the small modular reactors. We're no shrinking violet. We're an economic powerhouse in Canada, and we'll make sure that we send our products around the world and be less reliant on the Americans. And it's nothing against the Americans. I got a problem with one person, and that's Donald Trump down there.
That's all the time we have today. C'est tout le temps.
I'd like to just jump in, if I could. If we're through with questions, just before we wrap up, just some comments as the incoming chair of COF. I want to thank Doug Ford not only for his leadership over the past year as chair of COF, but also as our host here. And thank you to the province of Ontario, the town of Huntsville, the Deerhurst Resort here, all of the OPP officers and RCMP officers who have been here with us throughout these days to keep this orderly and safe. Thank you very much. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming all of you to Prince Edward Island next year. I know I've got very big shoes to fill as the chair of COF, and it's not lost on me that I'm one of the newer premiers around the table here, and that we're passing the baton from the province with the largest population, the largest GDP, to the one with the smallest of both of those. But Prince Edward Island has a history of playing an outsized role in the Federation, and we're looking forward to doing that again, and I'm very privileged to have that position. So Doug has told me to start planning now, because this is it's a big event to plan and host, but we're also very good at hosting major events in Prince Edward Island. And I just want to say there was some conversation about the history of COF around the table today, and how this started primarily as a venue to lobby for more health transfers, and over the years it became not necessarily a very cooperative relationship, with premiers refusing to meet with us, or just describing it as a venue where we would ask for more money and they'd say no. Obviously, that has evolved, and there was a lot of discussion about this, and you've heard it from other people here today, that it's become obviously a very cooperative venue, and in large part to the circumstances we find ourselves in, the problem of Donald Trump, but also because of the willingness of Mark Carney to engage with us and make us full partners at the table to resolve the issues that we're facing and to move this country forward. And he recognizes us as equal partners to get that job done. So all of us have, as you've all heard, gone out of our way to recognize that, so we appreciate that. And we hope to carry forward that sense of unity and cooperation, because we all know we can make an impact with that attitude going forward. And I look forward to nurturing that sense of collaboration as chair over the next year. So thank you very much for being here, and look forward to seeing you in Prince Edward Island.
Thank you, Premier. This concludes today's press conference.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chair.